Hello everybody, it's Wyvern here with another bit of Total War, Warhammer 2 Quick Match gameplay. This time around, we are on Troll Country playing as the High Elves against the forces of the Empire. And this is a matchup where, quite frankly, I haven't played it from the High Elf perspective in quite some time. And so I decided that the best way to approach it would be somewhat safely. For my Lord, I'm going to be running Techless. Techless, nice safety pick. Probably my favorite High Elf Lord, even though I know a lot of people are more fond of Valerial. I just love his selection of spells. Here we are going to be bringing Wild Heart as well as Shield of Sapphire. Of course, we have Greater Arcane Conduit, Net of a Mintock because snares are great. Enfeebling Foe, I really like this if you need to shut down enemy heavy cav, help counteract demigryphs, that sort of thing. Flock of Doom, of course, good if your Empire opponent decides to blob a bunch of trash units together. Regrowth, of course, to heal the nobles we've brought here. And then we do have Potion of Koroi, looking to heal up Techless if he starts getting hurt. Bound Fiery Convocation, because this spell has gotten major buffs and is now far more potent, can really delete lines of infantry. And then the Scroll of Hoeth, which, of course, I'm really fond of this ability. It reduces enemy Winds of Magic generation, and more importantly, increases their ability recharge time. So potentially, if you're about to have a big engagement with, say, a Cav mob or a Demi mob, you can drop this on like a Warrior Priest, on Franz, whatever. Deny them that critical moment of support early on in a fight, and by the time they can get those support powers off, it might already be too late. Now, besides that, we do have two nobles completely stripped down. These guys, of course, are very potent anti-large combatants, do have AP anti-large, so definitely very strong. They are going to be here to help zone off enemy heavy cav, help counteract lords on griffins, that sort of thing. We also do have 3 units of bolt throwers, really the core of this army. With 3, I figured I'd be safe against most Empire artillery builds. Now, bolt throwers do lose to Empire cannons one-on-one. However, usually most Empire players won't bring more than like 1 or 2 cannons. So if you have 3, or just the Hammer of Witches, so if you have 3 bolt throwers, you are likely to win. As you can see, I also deployed them here behind the berm, and this is because while in a straight up fight, bolt throwers do lose against cannons. Had my opponent, for example, deployed his cannons here and been in range immediately, the berm will actually hurt the straight line or lack of arc, or arc lacking cannons from hitting the bolt throwers. It'll make it much tougher. It actually fights where there's terrain in the way favor bolt throwers a lot more. So that's why we deployed behind the berm here. Now, our front line is composed of 4 units of spears. Not much to be said for these guys. They'll hold. They'll take time to kill for the Empire, and that's really all they're there for. We also do have 2 units of White Lines of Crace, both chevroned up a little bit, one all the way up to Chevron Veteran C3. This actually means they'll outtrade Greatswords in a 1v1, so that's nifty in my opinion. Going to be trying to hopefully counteract enemy greatsword play, and if my opponent did bring some heavy cavalry, these guys will do an okay job against them because of their AP values. Now, on the peripheries, we do have a bunch of Illyrian Reavers, 3 units of them in total, looking to surround my opponent, and then finally we do have a single unit of Silverhelms in the back to provide some more stable staying power. Silverhelms are actually a pretty potent unit, all things considered. Now, for my opponent, he did go with Karl, who's, of course, a very potent pick. In this situation, he has all of his kit. He's got Hold the Line, Stand Your Ground, Foe Seeker, Reichland Runefang, as well as Gal Moraz. So he's potentially could really crush my heroes very, very quickly. He's definitely going to be terrifying away my cavalry and going to be an absolute menace. However, he doesn't have heals because my opponent chose to bring a Light Wizard with Banishment, Net of a Mintock, Exorcism, which I believe was a mistake, though I could be wrong. Nowadays, it does grant leadership and immune to psychology. In my opinion, not worth it, especially against a faction like High Elves, but we'll see how it does. And we do, of course, have Blast, providing that magic and fire damage. In fact, given the fact that my army doesn't have any fear and terror, the immune to psychology is only really helping your army in case of multiple units routing around you, but not worth it in my opinion. For the front line, my opponent brought a bunch of swordsmen. These guys are very strong in this matchup. They'll outtrade Elven Spears, and that's really all you want from them. They'll hold up units like White Lines pretty efficiently. Behind them, some great swords. These guys are normally a match for the White Lions. However, with the chevrons I put in, assuming Franz isn't fighting on top of these guys, they should be beatable for the White Lions. Granted, one of my poor White Lions is already getting pounded on by the cannon. Besides that, we do have some spearmen with shields spread out on the flanks to provide additional anti-large support. The silver bullets as a core sort of infantry unit here, sitting in the middle, defended from all sides. The Hammer of Witches, of course, which is a good anti-artillery piece. Royalty of Griffites for that fear, terror, and disgusting AP anti-large, and 2 units of Outriders, who are immediately being pressured away by the Illyrian Reavers. Now, what I was trying to do here is get us around, sort of cut them off from retreating, and then get in on them. Unfortunately, a bit of a misplay here, because instead, what I should have really done is pursued here. and cut them off from escape. But instead, I dove in a little prematurely, thinking my opponent wouldn't be able to get away. The Legion Reavers get a bit of a haggard charge in. They will probably be able to pick off a few models on these Outriders. You can see a few models there do fall. But now the Silver Bullets are engaging, and I really can't stand there. My opponent does drop in at a Mintok, is shooting my poor Legion Reavers to death, and it's just looking bad. In the meantime, the Hammer Witch is losing a model to the fire of the Bolt Throwers, so definitely some potent stuff there. Unfortunately, these Legion Reavers just are not able to escape. They're netted down, and they're in some deep trouble. Now the Royal Dwarf Griffites, though, sallying out, and this is actually a bit of a mistake because it exposes them to the fire from those bolt throwers. Immediately my bolt throwers, all three of them, shift fire here. Techless nets is going to be netting these guys down, and we are going to be looking to murderize these guys while they are stuck out here in the open. You can see they immediately take a big hit there from Techless. In come the Nobles, I'm sorry, no net, Enfeebling Foe though. And so these guys now trying to flee, but getting pestered that whole time. And I actually leave a bolt thrower firing on the cannon. So these guys are definitely not having the time of their lives, losing a third of their models, and they don't have a heal to help them. So you can see the Noble there getting in on the back of these guys. The Noble's actually picking off entire models with those swings. So some potent stuff. They're already down to 13 models, losing more with every second. Techless is actually going to dive in, looking to get some hurt in on these guys, and they've lost over half strength almost immediately. Now that said, bit of a misplay here, allowing these guys to overextend where I really should have fled back. I do try to get a Fiery Convocation off, but unfortunately the spell just kind of didn't react the way it should have, and decided to insta-cast instead of allowing me to pivot it. So yeah, I'm not sure if that was an issue with my mouse or what, but it just goes straight down the line and barely scrapes these greatswords. So, you know, it did 600 damage, so I'll take what I can get. In the meantime, the Silver Bullets are unloading on poor Techless, and Carl does rat off the Illyrian Reaver, so that is definitely not good for us. However, we do still have a beat-up unit of Illyrian Reavers there. We do still have these Silver Helms who are charging out of the pipe, albeit being snared. Over here, we have more Illyrian Reavers, and we have Spears now pushing in from the flank. So we're actually getting the surround on the Empire player, despite having a smaller front line. Now, the Demigryph Knights getting massacred here, losing model after model, and because Carl is distracted over here, chasing the Illyrian Reavers, these guys have no help. This is a huge misplay on my opponent's part. Carl needed to be in the fight here. Screw the Illyrian Reavers. They're going to, if they come back, oh well. But yes, sometimes it's worth chasing off a Lord, if it, or like a very valuable monster like a Dread Saurian. But in the case of a unit like Illyrian Reavers, just let him be. You need to defend your front line, but my opponent's not doing that, so these Royal Griffites are getting massacred here, losing model after model, down to 5 now, and basically completely trashed. Hammer of Witches, in the meantime, is down a gun, so and it is being picked at slowly but surely by those bolt throwers, though they're not being the most precise there. They're doing their best. They try. Keep in mind, Hammer of Witch is actually a very potent artillery piece because it does have that built-in physical resist. It actually is 25% physical resist, which means that in these protracted engagements against Eagle Claw bolt throwers and units like that, it trades very, very well. Now, in the meantime, over here, the White Lions are sitting around doing nothing when they really should have been committed, so big misplay there on my part. Silver Helm's being bullied by the Hammer of Witches. But in come the Illyrian Reavers looking to shut these guys down. Now, as you can see, Scattershot is raining hell on the handgunners. Keep in mind, Scattershot was buffed in the last patch. It is much more potent than it used to be. It now does, I believe it is +3 bonus versus infantry. So, where before, yeah, Scattershot, not the greatest. If we can actually look at its damage profile here. So its bonus versus infantry now is 11, which means that every projectile is actually doing 22 damage against infantry, which is really solid, actually. So these poor handguns are just getting massacred. Granted, they haven't lost models, but they will lose them eventually. Now, the Great Cannon here being overwhelmed, knocked out. Over here, big misplay on my part, probably sending the Illyrian Reavers in to chase after the Outriders. And this Noble here is just being an absolute loser. I've been trying to pull him out for ages now. Instead, he's getting stuck in on these greatswords who are just chopping him to bits and just giving me grade A depression here because he is not able to get his way out of there. That said, bolt throwers supporting the Illyrian Reavers. Net of Mintok does go down on Franz, who is now trapped. He does cast Reikland Runefang on himself, but that's not going to protect him. Techless dives in, and this is a big misplay on my part. He actually blocks the Noble from getting a charge, and of course, Carl is going to swing back at him. Potion of Koroi does go down trying to heal him up, but leadership tanking, he is going to get terror-outed, and he is going to flee from the field. Carl, in the meantime, with Enfeebling Foe on him, still has Golem Raz, still has the benefit of the Reikland Runefang, is still hitting like a truck, and bludgeoning poor Techless, and we're not able to keep him down. We're not able to keep him pinned here. Bolt throwers focusing on the Outriders, and now we're not going to have heals because Carl is going to take to the skies and chase poor Techless off the map. So we're going to have no more heals, we're going to have no more Lord, and we're going to be down the leadership, so that's going to be a problem. That said, because Carl's been out here this whole time, it does mean the frontline fight is starting to swing in our favor. Bolt thrower fire is whittling down these handguns. Over here, Illyrian Reavers have been netted, so the net has been doing getting massive value for my opponent, for sure. It's netted down by Illyrian Reavers, prevented my backline play. However, it does mean that Carl is actually at 1800 HP. He is not going to be coming back from this damage. Outriders there get chased off. Balance of power swing in my favor. Over here, these spears will be able to sort of muck up the Empire spearmen. They're not great in this trade. Their stats are just not good offensively, but they can bog these units down for ages. And in the meantime, the White Lions over here are overwhelming the infantry pockets. These greatswords here isolated. The White Lions are going to charge in from the flank. They still have 74 models and martial prowess up, so they're going to be brutal. And I'm using my Leader Reavers to charge in from the flanks. So in this case, the Silver Helms, in some cases, the Leader Reavers to charge in from the flanks, get some damage in. These Leader Reavers will actually shift out. Now over here, the Bolt Throwers, we're trying to hit Carl, and they've actually not scored a single hit, so showing how bad they are against single entities when they're moving or single entity flyers. Over here, the Nobles do dive in on the Greatswords. Nobles not good against Greatswords because they are not really designed to kill infantry. They're an anti-large specialist and really anti-single entity specialist. But, you know, every bit of damage you can do, every little distraction you can make is worthwhile. And these Greatswords are now down to 44 and dropping models. These swords over here are going to rout, which in turn means the Leader Reavers can dive in, do some damage. Over here, these Silver Helms sitting and defending the Bolt Throwers, and as you can see, I'm starting to wheel the Bolt Throwers forward. This is for two reasons. One, to protect them more reliably against Franz, but two, to get more value out of that scatter shot. I do not want to be firing scatter shot from back here if I can avoid it. If I can push up here safely, because my opponent can't interrupt me at this point. He doesn't have light cav. His guns are basically offline. Granted, the Royal Griffiths here rallying on 3 models, but he doesn't have much to disrupt me with. So if I can avoid that, you know what? I'll get close, and I'm going to shotgun these guys at point blank range. These poor state troops won't stand a chance. Now here, the Light Wizard is trying to flee for dear life, but the Nobles are not letting him. Just cutting this poor guy down. They're all caked in blood. It's pretty disgusting. He gets spanked on the rear there, and this Noble just shifted through him. That's pretty insane. That just shows that Elven skill really counts for something. You can just warp through an Empire Wizard. But in the meantime, the White Lions do shatter these great swords, knocking them down to 8 models and breaking them, routing them from the field. The spears over here bog down fighting my spears, which, you know, it works, but it's going to take forever to kill them, even though they're so crippled. Now, Carl is going to dive in here, but he comes in on the smart side. He comes in safely from the White Nobles. I, for some stupid reason, charge into these swordsmen, which is a big mistake. Now, Bolt Thrower is starting to pour in on Carl, and because Carl is now stationary on the ground, he's a much easier target. Silver Helms do come in. The Nobles are trying to get in on Carl, and he is just being an absolute beast here, tanking everything. Actually is going to tear out the Silver Helms, killing like 4 models of swing there, which is just insane. He's down to 1,000 HP. White Lions are getting their swings in. Nobles trying to push through their own White Lions to get in, and they're struggling. So Carl here, just tanking like a boss, actually clocks my poor Noble over the head with Golem Raz. So Noble not having a good time of it. 300 HP, we almost got him dead. And the Noble gets terror-routed, so big problem there. In come the Swordsman, and the Noble gets distracted. So classic single entity issues. Yeah, the Noble gets distracted. Carl takes to the air, still has 250 HP, and of course, go figure, he does not rout. And this is a problem. I don't have a leader right now, so even though things look very grim for me, and yes, my Noble is still in good shape, potentially my opponent could still land a terror out. If he gets like a 1 meaty charge on the Noble, obviously, he still has a huge advantage in just infantry numbers. Potentially, he could still pull something off here, even though it is very unlikely. Now, over here, the Royal Griffiths actually get in on the Bolt Thrower crew. So, some brutal stuff. Now, here, I really should have pushed the scatter shot around the flank, but I'm trying to just fire through my men at these Empire State troops and whittle them down. The White Lions here slugging it out with the Light Wizard, trying to drag him down. Carl is coming back and is going to get a nice recharge. He's got Blood Roar and Fear and Terror, so keep that in mind. It's very strong stuff. And the Bolt Thrower continues whiffing because it sucks. Now, the Silver Helms here mop up the Royal Griffiths, so good job to them, finally getting rid of this absolute nuisance. But Carl does dive in and tear out my boys. But unfortunately for him, he meets the Noble face first and gets taken down. And the Noble here just isn't taking any crap from this Light Wizard and begins to slug it out with him. At this point, it is going to be GG for the Empire. They just do not have the tools anymore. With Carl and the potential for tear outs gone, they've got nothing going for him. So a very tight and intense game. Certainly some misplays made on both sides. I haven't been playing the most intensively. I've been getting rusty, and I definitely felt it this game. However, I was actually pretty satisfied with this build. The Bolt Throwers performed incredibly well. The new scatter shot with the +3 bonus for infantry, and I guess I said new, it's already been out for a few patches, for a few months now. But the improved scatter shot is so much better. In this situation, it was really able to beat down those gunners. 89 kills. Keep in mind, this is a 700 gold artillery piece. Throughout this game, these artillery pieces were killing Royal Griffiths. They were killing the Hammer of Witches, which are both insanely expensive. They were hurting Carl Franz, albeit not reliably. And they melted the Silver Bullets as well as Outriders. So these guys were generating value. Basically, everything they were attacking was more expensive than they were. These guys get racked up 89 kills. These guys 17 and 21, but these were most likely the Bolt Throwers that focus more on the cavalry. So keep that in mind. but just delivering an absolutely stellar performance. Actually, these guys gained a chevron, really melting that infantry with that scatter shot. Now, besides that, the nobles did really well. Managed to bludgeon Franz to death. Managed to shut down the Royal Gryphites with Teclis' help, of course. Did some really great work, and ultimately, essentially carried the game for me. In the late game, had I not had the nobles, obviously Karl could have just run shop on my army. Spears, they did spear work. The White Lions performed rather well. One of them actually gained a chevron here because these guys came in with, I believe, just one chevron. 95 and 123 kills, just murdering the great swords, holding down Karl and doing quite a bit of damage to him. One of the cool things about these guys is they're very mobile, so if your opponent's infantry breaks, you can chase them down. So they just did a very, very good job. Elite Retrievers, not so much. Some miss micro on my part, misusage, plus my opponent's nets meant that these guys kept getting snared. One of them did manage to shut down the Hammer Witches, but as you can see, one get absolutely 0 kills. Granted, I think these guys might have been the ones I threw against Karl a few times, but 0 kills, 19, 20, so some very unimpressive kill counts on these guys, and miss micro had a lot to do with it. I think if I had micro better, if I'd been more efficient about shutting down, protecting them and supporting them with other units, they would have done better. And Silverhelms, of course, did rather well. They always do. And poor Teclis, I really shouldn't have charged him in against Karl. I had everything, I had all my leadership in one control group, so I just kind of right-clicking on Karl, and I really should have separated Teclis out, so big misplay. Now for my opponent's build, I think a big mistake was actually running the Light Wizard with units like Royal Gryphites and Karl. Like, Light Wizard's not bad, and the nets in that game got insane value for my opponent. However, the fact that you cannot heal either Karl or the Gryphites especially is a big problem in the long run. Like, at least with the Gryphites, because there is model bleed, it's kind of understandable. You don't necessarily need healing as much. I oftentimes run the Gryphites again in certain matchups without healing. I think it's perfectly viable, but when you've got two very high value units, this is, for my opponent, this was probably like 4,000 to 5,000 worth of his army. Bring him some heals. If you got these high value, low model count, or single entity models, get some heals. You could get like an Earthblood to be able to support your greatswords better, some regrowth, and be in a better spot. Light Wizard's nets, yes, they were great. They shut down the leader maneuver play. They were very disruptive. But they actually shut down my Silverhelms at one point. But was it worth it when in the long run Karl got just dragged down into the muck? I'm not sure. I think you could have counteracted the leader maneuvers just with spear play and some better management on the Royal Gryphites units like that. And at the same time had the heals, especially for Karl, to allow him to perform into late game. Because if Karl had heals, that game would have been lost for me. He wouldn't have been. I wouldn't have been able to take him on with the single crippled noble. For the rest of the build, I think it's decent. Outriders, I'm not the biggest fan of in this matchup. Elite Retrievers will beat them down. You'll often see Elite Retriever archers who will horribly beat these guys down because they can outrange them. They'll shoot you, and if you try to get, and obviously you can't get into melee because they'll out melee you. So I'm not a huge fan of Outriders here. Hammer Witches did rather well for itself in the time it was alive. I think it should have focused the artillery probably, given how much damage it did in the long run, or maybe focus Teclis or the nobles. I think my opponent's focus was just off with the Hammer Witches because it hit units like the White Lions, but it really needed to be killing the elites like the nobles or the the bolt throwers. But those are just my 2 cents there. Actually, it wasn't silver bullets. My mistake. I thought it was silver bullets, but it was just handguns. But oh well. Regardless, we'll play the Garnana here. I do hope you guys enjoyed the video. I will say, actually, one other critique on the Light Wizard. Well, 2 other critiques, I guess. 1, Faw's Protection would have been much better, in my opinion, than the Banishment. And 2, the passive is not really worth it against High Elves, especially, because High Elves are not really that much of a fear and terror faction. But regardless, as I just mentioned, I hope you guys enjoyed. If you have any comments, critique, questions, as usual, don't hesitate to post them down below. I'll do my best to respond as soon as I can. I do thank you all for watching, and I will see you all in the next one. Bye for now.